So, welcome to the next CAD exercise. In this one, we'll be drawing a 4x2 Lego brick as depicted here. That's also the very first exercise any new Lego CAD employee will be asked to do, so very appropriate for you as well. In brief, we'll create a box, then we'll sketch the stud on top, just one, with the corresponding text, and then we'll use a pattern to do the 4x2 studs. Then we'll flip it around and do a shell command where we hollow it out. Then we will draw the ribs on the long and short sides and use a mirror to get them on the opposite side. And finally we'll draw the hollow tubes in the bottom, and all the dimensions necessary are depicted here. So let's get started. So first off, this one will be 15.8 by 31.8 millimeters and 9.6 millimeters in height. So we will go into Fusion. We will open a new document and we'll create a box. Again, we'll need to select the plane, and again I'll use the XY plane. Just hit a corner, and then we have the dimensions. So first off, it was 15.8 by 31.8. And next we'll need the height, and the height again was 9.6. So 9.6. And now we've got the box, so the rough outline of the Lego brick. So next off, we'll need to draw the stud on top. So here we have all the different studs, and one of them has the diameter of 4.8, and you'll notice that it's located 3.9 and 3.9 from that side and that side. Okay, so create a sketch on top of the brick, create a circle, and this one should be 4.8. Next, hit the dimension tool and say from here to the circle, it'll default to the center of the circle. This one should be 3.9. And likewise from the other side to the circle, this should also be 3.9. In this case, I will not enter the 3.9 because I can just hit the other dimension. Then it'll be a calculated dimension stating that I'll need 3.9 both in that and that direction. So now I've got the stud drawn, and next we'll need to extrude it by 1.8 millimeters. So hit E for extrude, click the circular outline, and 1.9 millimeters in height. So now I've got one stud. Then we need the text, so hit sketch again, click on the top cylinder, and when we draw text, we will need the text tool. This one should be aligned to a line, so I will just rotate it so we get the right direction. Hit the line tool, and this should be a construction line. I'll go from one side of the circle to the other. I don't know which height yet. I'll select that in a moment. And then I'll choose the Create Text tool. And I will hit the line. Sorry, not that space. I'll create text, and I'll hit the side of the line and draw the corresponding box in which I can write text. So the text here should be Lego. As you might notice, this is very large. So hit the dimension tool and get it to be about 1 millimeters. I'll center it, and I'll center it in, no, not there. We'll put the left. It seems to be pretty centered. I think that's perfectly fine. And we'll do the italic stuff, because if you really zoom into this one, you will be noticing that that's also what a Lego brick has. So I'm pretty satisfied. This looks about right. Hit OK. And finish the sketch, and next hit extrude and select the Lego text, ensuring that it's blue. And I'll extrude this one for about 0.1 millimeters. So if I rotate, you notice that I've got the Lego text on a single stud. So what about all the rest? Well, here we can use the pattern tool. There's either a rectangular pattern or a circular pattern or pattern on a path, geometric patterns, whatever we like. But in this case, the rectangular pattern is actually what we like. So what should we be patterning? It defaults to bodies, but this is just a single body, so that would be the entire Lego brick. So in this case, we're actually going for the features. So which features? Well, we need the stud and we need the text. So 2 features. Next, we'll need to hit the axis and just point to one of the sides and say that's one direction. How many? I need 4. And then you can actually just draw them out. And also the other direction, draw something out. It defaults to 3. That's not correct. It should be 2. It defaults to an extent in both dimensions. That's actually not what I would like. I would like a spacing because that's the one that's specified in my drawing. So notice here we've got 8 millimeters and 8 millimeters in both directions. So that's actually what we need to specify when we choose the spacing. So 8 millimeters in one direction and 8 millimeters in the other direction as well. So 4 spaced 8 millimeters apart, 2 spaced 8 millimeters apart, and hit OK. And now we've got all of the studs present. The reason why this is a good idea is that if you change it, let's say the 0.1 millimeters extrusion was incorrect, or the font was incorrect, or whatever, if I change the original single stud, all the other studs will also be changed in the same manner. So instead of drawing 8 separate studs, this is a vastly improved version of the same job, basically. But this is a whole brick. This will not work if we want to build anything. We need to hollow it out. So next we'll hit the shell button, and then you just need to select the surface to read from, in this case the bottom. And we'll need to check the dimensions. So it's 1.2 millimeters in thickness. So 1.2. And you can notice it eats everything, including up into the different studs. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So now we have the shell. Next up, we need the slits on either side. So if you go into this one and again look at the dimensions, you'll notice that these are 0.6 wide and 0.3 high. So in this case, I'll sketch from the bottom of my brick. So I'll hit this surface and I'll hit the rectangle and just draw a rectangle here. So the dimensions were 0.6 by 0.3. So 0.3, 0.6. So that's the little bitty thing I wanted. Next up, we need to place it correctly. As you might notice here, it has to be placed right next to the stud because the function is actually to connect to the studs on top. So we'll need to align it. The easiest way to do this will be to use a helping line. So hit the line tool, hit the construction, and draw a line from the center of the small rectangle to the center of the circle. As you might notice, I can't catch that. And that's because I actually haven't got access to this line. It's not in the same plane. I'll just hit escape. And if you rotate around, you can see what I'm talking about. We're drawing up here, but this one's not right there. So in order to gain access to that one, we need to project it into the sketch plane. So hit P for project, hit the geometry I want, and you'll notice that I get the construction geometry projected into my work plane. And now I can actually do what I wanted, namely to draw a line from the center of my small rectangle to the center of this circle. It's still not correctly placed, and that's because this one's not vertical. But if I hit the line, hit the vertical, it'll move into space. So now I actually know this one's placed right outside the stud I needed to be placed in. So we are done. Now we just need the pattern. I can either do the pattern inside here. I prefer not to do that, but there is actually the rectangular pattern option in here. The reason I don't like to do it in here is there's a lot of symbols and they get even worse when you do it in here. So I will actually tend to just extrude this one in the 3D and then do a pattern on the extruded feature. Okay, so again, hit E, hit this small little section. Until now, we've also always extruded in a known distance. In this case, I'll actually like to extrude to this surface, because that's actually the height I'd want it to go to. I don't know how high it is. Well, I could find out, but it's not necessary, because I just tell it to go to that surface, and it will extrude to that specific surface. So, now we've got one of them. Next up, again, we'll hit the pattern tool, so the rectangular pattern. It's set to features, so I'll just hit this feature. Next up, we'll select the axes, and again, this will be that way. And again, we'll need 4, and they should be spaced 8 millimeters apart. So, we've got all of them. Okay. But what about the other side? Well, I could have done a rectangular pattern like before, and said this should be spaced so and so. In the other direction, but I would like also to introduce a command called mirror. So first off, we need a central plane. It probably would have been better if I drew this Lego break with the Origo in the center, but you might remember that the Origo is placed in the corner, so we can't do that. But fortunately, we can create helping geometry, namely a midplane. So if you expand the construct button, you can see there are different ways of drawing a plane, including something called a midplane. So the midplane is just basically hit one side and the other side, and now I will have a plane specified in the center. I can just immediately help myself, because we also actually need to draw these rectangles on the side here. So once more, create a midplane between this side and this side, and then I've got the 2 planes I need. So now we can actually mirror these 4 things to the other side. Create, mirror. Again, it defaults to bodies, but we need features, and I'd like the initial extrusion and the pattern. And I want a mirror plane, which is this one, and now I've got the rectangles on both sides. So rinse and repeat. Now we need the short sides. So again, I'll hit this surface, sketch, do a rectangle, which should be 0.6 by 0.3. And again, we'll need to project the circle using construction geometry. Hit a line from the center of the rectangle to the center of the circle, and ensure this one to be horizontal. So now it's placed correctly. I'll hit finish, and 2 options now. I could do a pattern, then I'd need to specify the distance, but you might notice this one actually is perfectly symmetrical, so I could just use a mirror. So I'll use that one. So create a mirror. Oh, sorry, I forgot to extrude. Just extrude the rectangle, again not using a distance but to the bottom, and hit OK. And then do the create mirror using the just extruded feature and the same mirror plane. So now it comes over here. And now we just need it on the opposite side, but that's why we did the second plane. So again, create mirror, hit the initial extrusion and the mirror and the plane, and the two rectangles appear on the opposite side. So, we are almost finished. Next up, we'll need the circles in the bottom. I'll just hide the construction geometry by hitting the I. So, if we look into the dimension, you can see that we've got the circle placed here. And also we have a formula in order to calculate the diameter of the outer circle. The inner circle is 4.8. The outer circle is this equation. So let's draw this. So we'll hit the bottom here and sketch it. So we need a circle right in center. How to do that? Well, we could hit the line tool, create a construction geometry going from this circle to this circle. Because then we will actually have a center in order to draw a circle on. So hit the circle button, and this should be a regular geometry, so I'll switch off the construction. And again, if I hit the center of the line, a small triangle will appear saying you are drawing at the very center of this line. So first off, I needed a circle of 4.8. Next, I needed another circle, so hitting C, that should be another distance. And this one is 8 times the square root of 2 minus 2 times 2.4. So, dimension, hit this one, and say 8 times the square root of 2 minus 2 times 2.4. Yep. Hit enter, and it calculates the equation saying 6.514, 6.514. So, good to go. Hit finish, and again, I'll need to extrude what's between the two circles. That's easy, I'll just click it. Once more, I will not be entering the distance. I want to extrude this one to the top. Hit OK. So now I've got one circle, and again I can do a pattern. So hit the rectangular pattern, it's set to feature, click the feature, click the way to draw it, go in this direction, and we'll need 3, that's actually correct, and once more 8 millimeters apart. That should be good. So finally, and the instructions diverge a little bit on this point. I think this is actually a perfectly fine Lego brick, but if you notice the instructions, we have this little middle part here. So let's just assume this one needs to be drawn. I don't actually know the dimensions because they're not present down here, but let's just assume this is something we need to create. And I think it's about the same dimension as the small ribs. So we'll do one 0.6 millimeters wide directly in the center. So sketch, sorry, that was a mistake. Sketch on top of my brick. And now I would like a rectangle in the very center. So I'll hit the P for project, construction geometry, and get the center circle. So now I know where the exact center of my model is placed. I go back to regular geometry, then I'll create a rectangle, but in the rectangle part I can choose a center rectangle. So if I hit this one, I can go out and hit the side. So here are a number of constraints are imposed. You can see the orthogonality, we can see this is horizontal, and it's set to be on this line. I can't move it away. So that's perfectly fine. Now I just need a D for dimension and say this little distance should be 0.6. I'm guessing, but let's say that's one is correct. So I'm actually done. I'll hit finish sketch because oh, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I forgot to project the outer circle. We need to do that. Edit the sketch, hit P for project, and hit the outer circle. And this one should not be construction, that's actually what we require. because the only thing I want to extrude is actually this part and this part. So whenever lines intersect in Fusion, they actually divide the geometry. So my final extrusion will just be an E, and this part, and do it to the bottom of my Lego brick, and now I actually have that central rib that's depicted in the image. So one of the fun parts of Fusion is actually you can change the appearance. You can do it red, white, gray, whatever you like, if you just hit A. So in A, you have a library of different materials that you can impose upon this one. One of them is named plastic. So if you go into that one, there are some translucent plastics, including a very nice red. I'll just drag it over my Lego brick and it turns red. You might not be that impressed. I mean, okay, it looks nice, but it maybe could look nicer. One option is going to the display section and say visual style. It defaults to shaded with visible edges. That's why there are these black outlines. If I just said shaded, then I get a more realistic view. Now these black outlines are hidden. I'll just set it back. But you can actually also do ray tracing inside Fusion. So if you want a finer depiction of your project, you can go up onto the design button and do a render. So now we're in the ray tracing mode. You can actually specify the scene settings, what's the background, where are the lights and all that. And you can do an in-canvas render. That's just basically this one. And this will just carry on for a number of iterations until I get a good result. By the time it hits this one, it says it should be excellent, then it's finite, and it can create an infinity loop. So basically, if I change my geometry here, it'll do the ray tracing all over again. I can also do a capture of the image, and I can also do a specification of how I wanted my render to be set up. And actually also, if you have the education license, which I recommend, you can do this render in the cloud. That's one of the things that you gain with the that one. So let's try a final result. So I'll hit the image button and say, well, actually I want a current window size, or I can specify it. Hit OK. Then I need to save my geometry. This was a Lego brick 4x2. And I'll save it to the medical design. And oh yeah, I need to save the design. Sorry, go back to the design, save it. Lego brick 4x2. Go into the render, set it up, that's fine, and hit the render. So here you can default to whatever image size you'd like. You can do the cloud rendering, and this requires some cloud credits. You've got a lot of credits because it's an education version, and just hit render and it'll render in some time, but it doesn't take up computer power on your computer. You're free to leave this one. This has been uploaded to the cloud. It'll just crunch the design in the cloud, leaving you free to do other stuff. So that concludes the Lego exercise. Thanks for watching.